When we talk about the right wing, I would like to make a small amendment to that. We are talking more about the threat from the far right and the extreme right today. There has always been a right wing or a right politics in the world, in every country. But those are the old conservative right parties and forces. What we are witnessing today is the rise of the far right or the extreme right. Our party Congress, which was held last year in Kannur, the 23rd Congress, and the previous 22nd Congress held in Hyderabad in April 2018, had noted that there is a global rightward shift in politics. And in the last Congress, we said that global rightward shift continues. When we talk about that rightward shift, we are talking about the rise of the extreme right, the far right, as it is called generally in Europe and in the West today. That is, as compared to the old conservative right, which is only satisfied with maintaining the status quo in society, maintaining the vested interest of the ruling classes. This is a more radical force in the sense they want to change the society, shift it from today's basic positions in various countries and take it towards a more right-wing and more reactionary direction. Now, why is such a far right or extreme right force risen? And not only just risen, in some countries today they have become the dominant force. They have won elections. They're forming governments. What is this phenomenon? Why is it happening? Is it that suddenly in these countries the people there have become right-wing in their outlook, have become reactionary, and therefore they support these forces? So what are the socio-economic factors? What is the conjuncture internationally which creates the grounds for the rising of such forces and their advance? The first thing is to understand that. If you see Europe today, it is an alarming picture. Italy, which is the third largest economy in the European Union, has just last year elected to office a far-right government. In that, there are three parties. Two are already well known as right-wing or extreme right-wing parties. And the third party, which is a new party, is a neo-fascist party. Its origins are from those who look upon Mussolini favorably. And now they call themselves the Brothers of Italy. I'm using the English translation. Now the leader of that party, who started in a youth wing, pro-Mussolini youth wing, today has become the Prime Minister of Italy. Meloni, Giorgia Meloni. We have heard of men fascist leaders. Now we have women fascist leaders also. This is gender equality coming into play. You see? So, but it is a remarkable thing that Meloni becomes the leader, Prime Minister of Italy, exactly, I think, 70 years after Mussolini marched, this famous march to Rome to capture power. So this phenomenon is not confined to just one country like Europe. I mean, Italy. In Europe, you go to France, there is a very powerful party now called the National Alliance, earlier called the National Front. Its candidate, another woman leader, Marine Le Pen, she got 41% of the vote in the presidential election, coming second. You go to Germany, there is a alternative for Germany, a party which has got about 15% of the vote. You go to Spain, there is a party called the Vox, V-O-X, they pronounce it differently, Vox or something in Spanish, but it is now the third largest party in parliament. You go to Sweden, there is a right-wing coalition just now, which has been formed just 3 months ago, and the far-right party there, another neo-fascist party, because it's still not respectable to take them into the government, they're supporting it from outside, but they are the biggest party. I can go on and on of the number of far-right parties which are growing or have become a strong force in all the European countries. Now, this cannot be a phenomenon unless there is some socio-economic factors, certain class factors involved. And that is what I want to spend some time before I come to other parts of the world. That is, we are seeing today, wherever the neoliberal regimes were installed, and they were installed in all the European capitalist countries, the neoliberal regimes have all reached a point of crisis, and the outcome of that crisis, the consequences of that crisis has been felt among the working class and other sections of society. The neoliberal regime means what? It means the dominance of finance capital. It is the imperialism of finance which has now dominated the whole world and which imposes these neoliberal regimes in country after country. And in Europe, you all recall there was a major financial crisis in 2008, the global financial crisis it was called, which was the manifestation of the crisis of neoliberalism. Now, how the ruling classes met this crisis, I'm not going into too much detail. There were two things. One, they organized massive bailouts. Massive amounts of funds were made available to the corporates, the big banks, the big financial institutions, so that they can overcome this crisis. That was one aspect. The other was they imposed austerity regimes. Austerity for the working class and the working people. They cut the wages and salaries, they cut social security benefits in places, they cut pensions, various ways to impose austerity on the working class and the working people. Out of this came a tremendous ferment in society, because the traditional working class had already been attacked under neoliberal regime. Under this finance capital domination, industry itself had moved out of European countries, manufacturing, etc., moved to the developing countries, including particularly China. There was already a disaggregation of the working class. That is, the structural changes in capitalist production, where from the metropolis, the factories and industries were moved out to the new so-called newly emerging economies or developing countries, led to the disorganization of the working class. Entire working class communities found themselves without a livelihood and without any social and communal life. Mining communities in Britain, in France, big industries like steel, etc., were dismantled. And this weakened the working class movement, the trade union movement, which were fighting only for survival. Basically, once the working class got disaggregated and disorganized, the capacity for working class action, for collective action, declined in many of all these countries. And the financial crisis of 2008, which led to austerity measures, gave a further severe blow to the working class. It is in such a situation where, apart from all other changes, I'm not going into those details, where the working class and the left movements were already on the defensive, that this austerity measures were imposed, and all that the struggles of the working class and the working people could do was to try to defend or protect what they had gained so far. In such a situation, the massive discontent in society, the social discontent, found fertile ground for the extreme right or the far right to grow or to intervene and to exploit the situation. And how did they do that? In all the European countries, immigration had grown. And that again was part of the global situation in which imperialism had attacked, launched military aggressions in country after country, in particularly in the Arab world, the Middle East, where Iraq was invaded and occupied. Before that, Afghanistan was invaded and occupied. Syria was attacked. Libya was attacked. And out of the war and violence and civil wars that took place there, massive number of people wanting to escape this situation tried to migrate into Europe. And the migration which came, the illegal, what they call illegal immigrants, many of them were actually useful for the neoliberal capitalist regime because they got cheap labor, like in Germany. But in society there, the extreme right said, see, these people are posing a threat to our jobs. It is because we are getting all these Arabs and Africans coming in. They are threatening our livelihood. Not only our jobs and livelihood, they are bringing an alien culture. And that's how Islamophobia developed. If you go to France, you go to Germany, Spain, Italy, you'll find along with the campaign against this illegal migrants and based on a racist outlook that these are black and brown people, other is they are bringing in an alien Islamic religion and culture which is going to destroy our culture. So you found that the common denominator of all the far right and extreme right parties is targeting of the other. They are here, they are foreigners, they are Islamic, they are black people, they are going to threaten our society and culture. And given the fact that all these societies were already facing a crisis, there was crisis of unemployment. Those who were in employment were having only what is called precarious employment. We are seeing that increasingly in our country, so-called gig workers. They don't have any permanent jobs. There's no social security. So the anger against this onslaught against the working class and the working people was turned against these helpless migrants who are coming in because of no fault of theirs. Because the United States and NATO had gone into their countries, created this tremendous violence and war, and they were forced to flee. So you'll find all these parties. The brothers of Italy say we should arrest all these migrants, put them in boats and send them back to the countries they came from. That is one of the election planks during the election. So all these parties have Islamophobia anti-immigrants, those are not white. So racism, xenophobia, and Islamophobia. This was the common recipe which was used by all these parties, along with, of course, as we see, even when fascism rises out of a capitalist crisis, they say we will overthrow this ruling classes and bring another system which will provide employment for all. The anti-capitalist rhetoric will be there also. So it is these forces today who have grown. And there was, as I said, already the working class had been weakened, disorganized and disaggregated by the neoliberal regime and the domination of finance capital. And therefore, the left was not there in any effective form in most of these countries. Italy had a very strong communist party till 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Today, the Communist Party hardly exists in Italy. So the vacuum was filled by these extreme right-wing forces who would also use radical rhetoric, if necessary, to attract the working class and the working people, but always directing the anger of the people not against the system of the capitalist system or neoliberalism, but against the poorer sections of the immigrants, workers who have come into their cities and towns. So this is the rise, how the rise of the right has taken place. Now, in some cases of these parties, some of them can be called neo-fascist because they are not fascist in the old classical sense, and neither is there any conditions today for the rise of fascism as it existed in the between the two world wars in the 20th century. That is not the situation today. So some of these parties have changed their platform and rhetoric. As I said, the Nazi party would never promote women leaders. You can never think of that. They were masculine parties, you see. They said women have to be in the house and rear children, produce more Aryan children. But these they're called neo-fascists because they have understood the world has changed and they must change some of their ideas and outlook to attract the people. So you'll find most of them will adopt certain liberal rhetoric also when required. But at the core of it, it is still an extreme solution for the capitalist crisis that they find finally the ruling classes, though they are worried about which direction these parties will take, they understand finally that they are not directed against us. We can control them and manage them to take the necessary direction that the ruling classes require. Now, this is not only confined to Europe. We have seen the rise of Trump in the United States of America. Trump is no more the president, but Trumpian politics is still very much there in the United States of America. That is, the Republican Party, which is a right-wing party, is becoming more and more extreme right-wing, more far-right, accommodating all the far-right elements. So this is, as I'm talking about the advanced capitalist countries. But is the extreme right and far right not developing in the lesser developed capitalist countries? Yes, in the lesser developed capitalist countries also, this phenomenon has arisen. Let us take three countries. The first in Latin America, which is Brazil, which is the biggest, as you know, country and economy in South America. As you know, till the 1st of January, the president of Brazil was Bolsonaro, Jair Bolsonaro, who was, as some people said, Trump on steroids. He was the most reactionary president ever in the history of Latin America. And displayed all the fascistic tendencies which can be exhibited. For example, when COVID came and thousands started dying, he said it's just a cold. Somebody catches a severe cold, there's no problem. So he refused to order vaccines, treatment, etc. As a result, 700,000 Brazilians died in the COVID pandemic. Apart from that, he said, I don't believe all these Amazon forests are required for saving the environment. He gave the big builders and contractors free run, go and destroy all the forests, cut down all the trees. So the extreme right-wing nature of this person, everybody thought that in this election, which was held in November or October last year, that Lula will have an easy victory, the left of center candidate. But what happened? Finally, Lula won with the narrowest margin, less than 1%, and only 2 million difference between the two. That means Bolsonaro could still get 49% of the vote in a direct contest, more than 49%. What is this? How does this happen? Now, Brazil is a predominantly Christian country, but within Christianity, there is an evangelical church. The evangelical churches are more radical than the conservative Catholic church, which is the dominant church. These evangelical churches have amassed great resources and power. They run radio stations, television stations, and they are all Bolsonaro supporters. And Bolsonaro openly allies with the evangelical church. And Bolsonaro is anti-indigenous people, anti-black, racist. So they always will find enemies to say these people are useless, worthless. Because of them, we are not progressing. So you have the role of radical religious groups. You have a force which is anti-indigenous people, because indigenous people there still what we call tribal people here. They're called indigenous peoples there, and there are still a substantial number of people. So you have had a most reactionary regime which openly said we will, if necessary, call in the military and have a military coup if I lose the election. But he's still a force. But he was defeated finally. You go to Turkey. Turkey has a president, Erdogan, a long-lasting president. He's been prime minister and president now for, I think, 16 years. He's won every election held. They also have elections. They're authoritarian, they're dictatorial, but they always have election and win elections. And how do they win election? A mixture of Islamist nationalism. That is, Turkey was the most secular country in the Middle East after the Kemal Atatürk revolution of in the early 1900s. And Turkey was one Muslim country where it was outlawed. You can't wear a hijab in public places. You can't go to university wearing a hijab. That was the extreme secularism which came. Today, that is no more there in Turkey. Everybody wears a hijab, including the Erdogan's wife. In fact, gradually the Islamization and desecularization of Turkey was initiated. And along with this Islamism, there is a nationalism. And that nationalism is directed against the Kurdish minority. There has been fighting, internal war, literally, to attack the Kurdish minority and consolidate the Turkish majority around this religious nationalism. And so far, no force has been able to counter it, because along with that, he wields the stick also, danda. The opposition is always attacked. The main leader of the opposition, who contested against him as president, has been in jail for the last 5 years. He happens to be also Kurd. Thousands of university professors, journalists are in jail. But he holds elections. He is recognized as a democracy. And very similar to what is happening in India today. You see. In fact, Modi has, I think, adopted the Erdogan model in one sense. That is, you have elections, but you'll have authoritarianism. You will control the courts, you will control the bureaucracy, you control the universities, and you will ensure that the judiciary is packed with people who support the ruling party's ideology. This has happened, and the army was the bastion of secularism. He has already jailed 40 generals in the last few years, put them in jail because they're secular. So, but you have an extreme right government in Turkey, and they are also part of NATO. They're allied to the United States of America formally, from not now, from earlier, and they continue. America does not find this very difficult as long as they are part of their military alliance. And then you have India. Now, what I have said about Europe and Brazil and Turkey should enable you to understand the rise of the extreme right in India, which is the RSS and the BJP. Not only the rise, they're coming into power and becoming a dominant force today in the country. All of them, the far right in Europe or in Turkey or Brazil, they use three things are common. One is a form of nationalism which is popularly called, internationally called ethno-nationalism. Ethno means you base your nationalism on a race or a religion or a ethnic community, not on the basis of territorial nationalism, that all those people who live in one country, that is our nation. No. Nation is defined by a race or a religious affiliation or ethnic affiliation. So today in Italy, when they talk about Italian nationalism, they say only the original Italians are Italians, all others are not Italians. Even if they have been given citizenship, we don't consider them Italian. The same thing would come to Germany eventually. What Hitler was saying, the Aryan race, you see. The same thing applies to Sweden. And the same thing applies to Turkey. That Turkish nationalism excludes the Kurds. You are separatist, you are anti-national. And that nationalism in India is manifested in what we call Hindutva nationalism. That nationalism is only for Hindus. Hindus are the nation, and only Hindus have the right to be called part of the Rashtra, Hindu Rashtra. So that nationalism which excludes others and finds a target. And in this country, if you have the target as the immigrants who have come into Europe in the last 2 decades, here the target is the Muslim population of this country. The only difference between Europe and India is there still the immigrants constitute less than 5% of the population. But the Muslim population of India, first of all, they're not immigrants, and secondly, they are much bigger. The last census, it was 14% of the population. Now, they are made a target. So, this nationalism is what is used to whip up a false sense that you're not actually communal. We are not talking about communalism, we're talking about nationalism. Hindus are nationalists, Hindus are the nation. So we are not talking about any communalism. So this is how they appeal and attract people on the basis of a nationalism. They replace all other nationalisms with this virulent, narrow, parochial form of nationalism, which today has become the dominant idea of nationalism in most parts of India today, unfortunately. The second is, which we are seeing in common, you have to have this nationalism always finds enemies within, as I said. So it is Kurds in Turkey, it is the indigenous people, blacks and all the inferior peoples in Brazil, and it is the other non-white immigrants in Europe. In India, the biggest minority, of course, is the Muslims, but even Christians are targeted because they are not part of the so-called nation or mainstream of the nation. And the third aspect of all these far-right and right-wing parties is they never challenge capitalism. They never call for overthrowing or ending of the neoliberal capitalist regime. All that they say is that this is to serve our people, not the others. Our job should not go to people who are outside our community or our religion. So all of them are actually integral or part of the capitalist system or neoliberal system in class terms. None of them take any anti-capitalist position, except in rhetoric when they want to mobilize support. So in India today, if you look at the Indian situation, we will see that we have today extreme right government. And that government has come out of the development of an extreme right extremist party, that is the BJP. But unique to India, unlike all these other countries, is that this party is not the real party. This party is only the front. As once Govindacharya called Vajpayee the Mukhota, he's a mask. So the BJP is a mask and the RSS is actually the actual face behind that mask. And if you look at the RSS ideology, and unfortunately, I think even in Bengal, because the RSS and the BJP were not very much known till a few years ago, if you look at the RSS ideology, you read the texts, you read the books written by the RSS Sarsangchalaks, whether it's Golwalkar or whether it is up to now the Mohan Bhagwat, etc. The language they speak is reminiscent of the language used by the extreme right at the beginning of the 20th century. Some of it is fascist, but it is not only fascist. Some of it is based on racial theory. There were a lot of people who believed in various racial theories in the early part of the 20th century. The attempt to say Hindus are a race and Hindus are Aryans. The Aryans were indigenous to India. They didn't come from outside India. All unscientific theories. And then come to the thing of exceptionalism. Hindus are an exceptional race. And therefore, this is our motherland. So all others who have other religious faiths cannot really be part of this motherland. So many aspects of this theory would be reminiscent of all the far right, extreme right, fascistic ideologies and theories which existed over time in the 20th century. That is given our own Indian interpretation and Indian creative application, if you might call it. So today, with that organization exercising the levers of state power, well, don't forget, Modi was a pracharak of the RSS. A pracharak means a whole-time cadre or worker of the RSS. So there is a difference between a Swayam Sevak and a pracharak. Vajpayee was a Swayam Sevak. That is, you are volunteering and working according to whatever time you can give for the thing. A pracharak is a full-time cadre, fully trained and equipped by the RSS. He has to undergo the training, including the officers' training, what they call. They have modeled it as after army, officers' training camp, OTC. You have to do the final 3-month OTC. So it is these people who are manning the government and therefore exercising the levers of state power. So it is no more the rise of an extreme right in India. The difference with many of the European parties, they are still trying to become powerful and capture, except for Italy. Italy also is a coalition, you see. But here in India, like Erdogan in Turkey, they have been in power for now a pretty long time. They have been here for 8.5 years. So we have to understand what the nature of this creature is, first of all. You see. How do you label this animal or beast? You see, if you don't have a correct understanding of what this character of this party and the organization is, you will not be able to work out the approach or the tactics and the strategy to fight this force. So, there, drawing from the international experience, as I said, in Europe, a situation is different because you have a much more advanced form of capitalism where it is the centers of the international finance like London and Paris and Frankfurt, etc. And the full brunt of this neoliberal system was felt in these countries more than 3 decades ago already. In India, this the negative aspects is that you have this party in power already for 8.5 years. And this party has proved itself capable of mobilizing large sections of people in their support, becoming mainstream. Now, in Europe, they are discussing how the far right is becoming mainstream. They were a fringe element earlier, and now they're becoming mainstream. Their language has become mainstream, their slogans have become mainstream, their politics is becoming mainstream. Unfortunately, in our country, it's already happened. You have the RSS and the BJP, and what they say and talk is pervaded daily by our media. The media, which is the corporate media, is every day pervading their ideology and their politics, including their hate politics. You see. Now, why is this happening? Here, the class aspect must also be understood. That the Hindutva forces have become the dominant force in India today. The BJP has become the dominant political party today because it is supported, it is partnered, and it is in alliance with the Indian big bourgeoisie, what popularly we call the corporates. The Hindutva corporate nexus is what gives this party and the RSS such great resources and strength to become a big force today in our country. If you look at the entire history of our political system, the Congress party, when it was dominant, and now the BJP, which is dominant, at no time has the big bourgeois sections of our capitalist class been so united in support to the BJP. We talk about Adani and Ambani, of course, all the time. Adani and Ambani is Modi's favorite crony capitalists. That's a fact. But it should not be reduced to that. If you look at the entire corporate sector, the big corporates, the big bourgeoisie, all of them say this government is good for us. And because this government and the BJP and the RSS is pro-big business, they are unashamedly in support of the big bourgeoisie of this country. This big bourgeoisie knows this is the best we can get in the given situation. Here's a government which will see that all our interests are met, our service needs are met, and you may say anything you want about GST, oppose it, say it's affecting the small businesses, affecting small traders, etc. But the corporate sector is happy with GST. So they have no complaints. So in every area you will find that the big bourgeoisie fully endorses this government. And if they have to support Hindutva also, no problem, because Hindutva provides them with a system or a political system which is stable for them to serve their interests. So this is the key to the strength of this BJP and Hindutva, that they have the class support of the strongest section of the ruling classes. And I don't have to explain it, how it translates in politics. You go to any election today held, the BJP is a party which will outspend any other party in any way. You can't imagine the amount of resources they have. So the same resources are spent to also build their organization, build their media, the communication. So this is the nature of the extreme right or the far right in India today. So fighting them today, how do we go about meeting this threat? First of all, it should be recognized, unlike many of the non-left parties who always think at the time of election, if you come to some intelligent and clever tactical alliances, we'll be able to fend off the BJP threat. Yes, electoral understandings and alliances will be important in an election, but they will not be of any use unless you have been able to conduct the ideological and political struggle against the BJP and the RSS. Not at time of election. Nobody bothers at the time of election. But continuously, just like the RSS works within society, round the clock, continuously through various of its outfits and forums, socially, cultural, educational, they have various organizations working in society. You have to build such forums and organizations which can take the anti-RSS, anti-Hindutva ideology, not negatively, by putting out your own democratic, secular and left ideology and vision among people. This is an area which is lagging far behind today. So importance of this struggle is to be understood. I'm sure if we look back at West Bengal also, because I know 15 years ago when I went to Odisha and we had a discussion in our party, at that time our comrade said the RSS is running 1,000 schools in Odisha at that time, 15 years ago. All the Sishu Mandirs and Saraswati Vidyalayas, etc. So they are working constantly in society, and already in many parts of India, particularly in North India and Western India, large sections of people have already are imbued with this Hindutva ideology of consciousness. They may not consciously express it, but it is already there in their minds. They have succeeded in that. That is why when Uttar Pradesh election takes place, or now Gujarat election took place, a journalist will go and talk to people, they'll say, yes, महंगाई है, बेरोजगारी है, ये है, वो है, किसानों की ये problem है, all these problems they will say. But when it comes to voting, suddenly, if you look at that and say there's a lot of discontent, anti-incumbency is there against BJP. Election time, BJP has increased its percentage of vote in UP. BJP has increased its percentage of vote in Gujarat this time. You see, this is not because of lack of opposition unity that they won. The majorities would have come down if there was unity, because already substantial sections of people have been captured already by the Hindutva ideology. So yes, problems are there for our job, for our this thing, but our party is the BJP, you see, whatever come and go. So this, how do you tackle this. Now, this can be tackled only in a twofold struggle. But it's a twofold struggle. It can't be this or that struggle. That is, in our country today, because the BJP and the RSS is fully implementing a neoliberal agenda, we are seeing its impact, its consequences on the people. I don't want to go into detail. Now, at the end of the year 2022, a lot of commentaries were made. State of our economy, state of employment, state of inflation, etc., etc. One report said the unemployed figure has crossed 5 crores by the end of December. Inflation throughout the year, retail inflation has been high, ranging from around 7%. The value of the rupee has fallen to the extent now it's 82 rupees to a dollar. All this has happened. And on the daily lives of the people, whether they are ordinary workers, whether they are farmers, whether they are agricultural workers, whether they are middle class employees, etc., etc., their living conditions have deteriorated and the cost of living has increased. This is a fact. So there is onslaught on the people's livelihood and living standards. So our struggles against these policies of the government, the impact of these policies, more and more united struggles encompassing the widest sections of people, whether they are working class, whether they are peasantry, etc. We have seen that such struggles are developing and have developed. We saw 2021, the year of the Kisan struggle. The whole year we saw year-long struggle, which we have not seen before. We have seen growing unity between united actions between the working class organizations, the trade unions, and the Kisan organizations. We are seeing efforts to widen these struggles by drawing other sections also, other organizations. This must be kept up. We have to continue to fight against the policies of the central government and the state governments where such policies are also implemented. So this is one aspect. The struggle for livelihood, the struggle against privatization, the struggle of the people against inflation, price rise, etc., etc. This will have to continue to be built up and strengthened. But all these struggles remain incomplete, remain insufficient, remain, what I would say, without a political impact, unless you are able to simultaneously carry on the ideological and political struggle against the ideology and politics of Hindutva, of RSS and BJP. That politics today is becoming dominant because the entire media projects that politics, the entire corporate media, because the corporate media wants this politics. So you'll find constantly bombarded with this propaganda and ideology in the newspapers, in the television, in social media, etc., etc. So unless we step up the struggle against the Hindutva ideology, and the Hindutva ideology is becoming dominant, and it finds reflection in the non-BJP bourgeois parties also, unfortunately not. Some of them think that instead of confronting Hindutva directly, let us also adjust to the Hindutva thing, adopt some sort of soft Hindutva approach, and then outmaneuver the BJP. You see, even Kejriwal tried it in Gujarat this time. It didn't work. It won't work. It only strengthens them further. Because then the RSS says, yes, this is what we want. All Hindus should have the same political approach. They may be in different parties, we don't mind. But if you propagate our ideology, they have no objection to that. So here comes the key role of the left. Because these parties are not capable of mounting this ideological challenge, or even how to frame it, how to take it to the people. It is the left which has, because of our ideology, the scientific ideology, we know which are the wrong things, which are the negative points, which are the divisive points, and how to present an alternative to it. That role has to be played by the left today. We may not be strong as a force at the all India level, at the national level. We may not have that same strength as some other non-left parties, but in the ideological struggle, in the political struggle, it is the left which can play the key role initiating this so that others can also then join that. You see, if you can be able to frame it in such a way, then say, all of you accept this as the alternative platform. That becomes very important. So the combination of these two struggles, the daily struggles which we want launch, at which we have been adept, we have vast experience in conducting struggles. Those struggles, many find today that we are conducting those struggles, but we are not able to politically isolate or defeat the BJP in election. I remember after the Kisan struggle, many people said outside, in UP, at least in Western UP, this time the BJP will be defeated in the assembly election. But the BJP was not defeated in Western UP also. They lost some seats because the polarization they made between Hindus and Muslim peasantry there got reduced to some extent, but not fully given because of struggle. It brought you some level of unity also, but the old outlook remained enough for the BJP to cash in on and still win election. So don't underestimate the BJP because, as our party program said, when we updated our party program in 2000, we said the BJP is not an ordinary bourgeois party. Not an ordinary bourgeois party like other bourgeois parties. It has a speciality, which is that it is run, controlled and guided by the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which has a fascist ideology. So, to match that, you cannot fight the Modi government, you cannot fight the BJP without strengthening this aspect of the struggle. BJP and Narendra Modi knows it very well. When they defeated us in Tripura in 2018, after the election, Modi went for the inauguration of the new government. And in that rally, he said one significant thing. He said, this is an ideological victory for us. What does that mean? Defeating the communists was not just a political victory. It's an ideological victory because we have fought and defeated the CPIM, you see. He understands that. And the other day he said in an interview last year, he said the communists are not now in the world, India, you can't see communists except in one corner, meaning Kerala. But they are still a threat. Ideologically, he said they are still a threat. You see. So they recognize that the communists and the left are the real ideological threat to them. We are the only ones who can take up this battle. Now, we have to take up this difficult task of combining these two struggles in the coming days. Because as long as we neglect the other struggle, as I said in Turkey, it's a difficult struggle because you have already made the Kurds an enemy. And among the Kurds, because they are being attacked, they have also resorted to armed struggle. They have tried to fight the Turkish army. So once you have that situation, it's very difficult to mobilize the majority of people who are already roused by this form of Turkish nationalism. So, but in our country, we have also traditions. We have traditions of having tremendous united movements and popular struggles in our country, overcoming all the differences in caste, religion, community, etc. So that tradition cannot be done away with easily. We saw, as I said again, the Kisan struggle in Western UP. Yes, we saw the same district, Muzaffarnagar, where the Jat peasantry went out and killed Muslims. They sat together, and the Jat leader, the peasant leader, then said, I will shout Har Har Mahadev, and you shout back Allahu Akbar also. So the change comes because of this tradition is there of the peasantry fighting against colonialism, against imperialism. After all, the 1857 mutiny, everybody knows, was fought shoulder to shoulder by the Hindu and Muslim, not only the soldiers, but the peasantry. So we have this tradition. We know that if we go amongst the people and patiently work among them, build this twofold struggle, the days of this Hindutva regime will be numbered, and we will be able to succeed in protecting all the gains that this country made after the freedom struggle, where we set up a secular democratic republic, which is today endangered by these forces. Thank you.
Myself, and on behalf of the audience and Ganashakti, extend our heartiest thanks to Comrade Prakash Karat. এখন আপনাদের সামনে গণশক্তির 57তম প্রতিষ্ঠা দিবসের বক্তব্য রাখবেন আমাদের রাজ্য কমিটির সম্পাদক